The readings today are from Isaiah 60, verses 1 through 6, and Matthew 3, 13 through 17. And from Isaiah, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. But the Lord will arise upon you, and his glory will appear over you. Nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift up your eyes and look around. They all gather together. they come to you. Your son shall come from far away, and your daughter shall be carried on their nurses' arms. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and rejoice, because the abundance of the sea shall be brought to you. The wealth of the nations shall come to you. A multitude of camels shall cover you. The young camels of Midian and Ephah, all those from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and frankincense, and shall proclaim the praise of the Lord. From Matthew, then Jesus came from Galilee to John at the Jordan to be baptized by him. John would have prevented him, saying, I need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me? But Jesus answered him, let it be so now, for it is proper for us in this way to fulfill all righteousness. Then he consented, and when Jesus had been baptized, just as he came up from the water, suddenly the heavens were opened to him, and he saw the Holy Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, this is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased. Here ends the readings.
Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. I think we hear these words, and most of us immediately think of the birth of Christ as the light that has come into the world. These words are reminiscent of the words from Isaiah 9 that we hear almost every Advent or Christmas Eve service. The people living in darkness have seen a great light. We might hear these words and even think of John's Gospel, which we also hear at Christmas time. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The early Christian church looked at these Isaiah prophecies and made that connection. They saw the coming of Christ as the manifestation of God's glory in the midst of the darkness of this world. And the prophet's mention of gold and frankincense, two of the gifts of the Magi, only would seem to lead to confirming that conclusion. But I think we need to step back a minute. Isaiah wrote these words to a very different audience in a very different situation than what we might be thinking of. And sometimes going back and looking at the context of that prophecy, the original context of the prophecy, actually enhances our understanding of both then and what these words might mean to us now. So Isaiah speaks to a people who have come back to their own homeland after a long exile, after a humiliating defeat at the hands of their enemies. They have come back to their homeland with instructions, prophetic instructions, to rebuild the temple of the Lord. But the people have been unable to complete that task. As they returned to Jerusalem, as they settled into their land once again, they were plagued with political strife and corruption and economic instability, resulting in their continual failure to get this most basic task completed, to rebuild the temple. The temple, think about this. The temple is the center of their identity as a people. It is the center of their identity as God's holy chosen people. And the excitement and the joy of returning to their homeland has faded in light of this overwhelming failure. And it is to these people who are despairing, who are disheartened, who are downcast, that Isaiah speaks these words from God. Arise, shine, for your light has come. He says, look up, look around. God is here with you. God is at work. God is changing the world. The glory of the Lord shines on you, and you in turn shine in the world. And not only that, Isaiah is audacious enough to claim, in the midst of the rise of the Persian Empire, which is more powerful than Israel will ever hope to be, as they think at that time, He says, nations will come to your light, Israel. Kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift up your eyes and look around. They all gather together. They come to you. And your sons shall come home from far away. Your daughters shall be carried on their nurses' arms. What Isaiah is telling them is to believe. Believe that they are still an important part of God's redemptive work in this world. All that they have lost, Isaiah says, will be restored to them. All those who are still in exile, who have settled in other lands, will come home. The Jewish Study Bible puts the next verses this way. It says, as you behold, you will glow. Your heart will throb and thrill. I love reading different translations because sometimes there's just that phrase that grabs your attention. As you behold, you will glow. That really captures the heart of what we need to remember with this text, of what we need to remember with this text. Neither the people of Israel back then, nor those of us who celebrate the birth of Christ now can shine on our own. It is just impossible. We can only reflect the light that God shines into this world. Isaiah commands the people to look up, to believe the promises that God has made to them, to open themselves up to receiving the light of God so that they in turn can glow. As you behold, you will glow. Now I wanted us to hear that context because I think the church today is in much the same situation as the people of Israel during Isaiah's day. Every day we seem to hear more about how we are losing ground or how the church is becoming irrelevant in this world. Every day we hear stories of darkness where people's lives are devastated. And if you are like me, you wonder why this has to be so. Why are there so many young people without hope that they think kill and be killed is the only way left to live? Why does hate seem oftentimes so strong in our world? And how have we as the church not had more of an impact? Do you ever wonder those things? Do you ever ask those questions in your heart of hearts? Why is this happening? Why is the church being shoved to the side? Why are we not having an impact on the way people think and act in this world? I was listening to an NPR discussion the other day on the culture war that is raging now in our country, and really in many parts of the world that rely on social media for communication. They said it was a culture war of hate versus appreciation or affirmation or encouragement or acceptance. And the discussion happened to be in relation to art. And that may have been what actually caught my attention because I admire artists. I greatly admire people who are willing to kind of put themselves out there, to produce something and set it out there and say, here's what I'm trying to say, or here's what I'm feeling, and then letting other people judge that. I think that producing or performing art places a person in a great position of vulnerability, and I kind of admire that. Artists quickly become used to reviews and understanding that what they produce won't appeal to everyone. That some people may love it, some people may hate it, and perhaps many will never see it or understand it or care about it at all. They become used to that. But the rise of social media has also produced what are now called trolls. Maybe you've heard of them. Trolls are people who just spew rudeness and hatred and disrespect. You name it, all over social media. It isn't enough for them to say that they don't appreciate something that they heard or saw or read, or that they dislike something. They have to lash out at the artist and tear them down as much as they can. And it has got to the extent that some artists actually fear for their safety after the comments that have been posted about them on social media. And it doesn't pertain only to artists either. Anyone who voices an opinion on social media or dares to act in ways that these trolls don't think are right can be a target. You know, sadly enough, I've even seen this kind of behavior on Christian websites. Sometimes if you read Christian websites, an article, and you scroll down and you start reading the comments, it's kind of devastating. to see what people who I'm sure consider themselves Christians are willing to write about other people. Time magazine did a study on social media, and they tracked down and they interviewed some of the most prolific trolls out there on the internet. And they discovered that the majority of these people that they were able to interview confessed to having very low opinions of themselves. And social media was for many of them a microphone to lash out at other people as a way of sharing their pain. How sad is that? It is easy, I think sometimes, to look around and think that we are fighting a losing battle. And yet, just like the people of Isaiah's day, these words come to us. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Arise, people, shine, for your light has come. This is one of our most important doctrines in the Christian faith, and we oftentimes don't give it a whole lot of attention. If we were Orthodox, Epiphany would be a greater celebration for us than Christmas. Imagine that. Oftentimes we allow Epiphany to go by without even hardly mentioning it or observing it. But Epiphany is all about this idea that the light has come into the world and it changes everything. And this is what anchors our hope. The light has come. This is the reason that we continue on. We carry on and we don't despair because the light comes into the darkness and the darkness has not overcome it. The darkness will not overcome it. The darkness cannot overcome it. This is the crux of our faith in what God is doing in us and in the world, for us and for the world. Remember, we are a people with a crucifixion and a resurrection in our history. Nadia Bolz-Weber is a Lutheran pastor and author and theologian, emerging theologian, and she has said that Christian hope is really a defiant hope. She said it's very different from optimism. Optimism chooses to see the positive, often ignoring the negative. She said Christian hope doesn't deny the darkness that is in the world, the despair, the devastation even that is around us. But hope says, keep looking, look deeper. There is something besides these things. There is something deeper even than the darkness. God is at work. In the midst of these things, God is a light in the darkness. And the darkness, no matter how deep, has not overcome that light. Our work as a church may not be complete, but it has already found its fulfillment in Jesus Christ. Meaning we do the work of the church in the knowledge of God's faithfulness. That's what Isaiah was telling the people. He wasn't saying, look, the nations are coming to you. They looked around and there were no nations beating down their doors, wanting to come to their light. He was saying, look, believe in the promises that God has given you. God has been faithful in your past. Remember your history and look ahead to the future, because that same God is there in your future. We, of all people, should not be people who whine and moan about the state of the world, because we are the people who know the future is already established by God, and it is bright. We are people who have been invited to be God's partners as God brings that future to pass. How exciting is that? You know, a few weeks ago, several of you volunteered a Sunday afternoon to help children imagine what Bethlehem may have looked like the day Jesus was born. We had 16 children come that day to go through our little village of Bethlehem. We had several adults that came, and we had our own youth group here helping and sharing. For 16 children and their parents, there was a glow here at Hubbard United Methodist Church that afternoon. It doesn't have to be so complicated. We don't have to have all the answers. We only need to be faithful. There's one last thing that I want you to notice about this passage. I want you to notice, now remember what's happening. These people are failing miserably in the one task that they have been given as they come home. And Isaiah does not say to the people, you need to work harder. You need to get out there and do more to get God's attention or approval. You need to impress God with your determination. No, Isaiah says, arise, look up, Shine, reflect the glory of God that is all around you. This passage isn't about doing more or working harder. This is a promise. Remember those words, as you behold, you will glow. That's the promise. God has already chosen to shine in this world. God has already chosen to shine through you and me. Can you even imagine? Isn't that just amazing? Isaiah calls us to pay attention. This passage is just about being aware so that we can reflect the activity that God has already begun. Think about the words spoken at Jesus' baptism for a moment. This is my Son, whom I dearly love, and with whom I am well pleased. These words are spoken before Jesus preaches a single sermon, heals a single illness, or casts out a single demon. These words are spoken before Jesus has done anything to prove himself, as we like to say. And this, Scripture tells us, is how God feels about each one of us as well. This is my child, whom I dearly love, and with whom I am well pleased. Jesus comes to bring the light of God into the world, not to keep it for himself, but that we all might shine. He comes to set other people on fire, not to burn like a torch all on his own. And the best way I know to catch that fire is to keep my eyes on Christ, to bend my heart toward God's heart. So would you please pray with me? God of life and light, your glory shines as far as the east is from the west and from the north to the south, so that all people may see and be radiant, so that every heart might thrill and throb. Overwhelm us with the joy of your presence, that our hearts and hands would reflect your glory to the world around us. Make us glow, Lord, make us glow with that defiant hope that will not give in to the darkness around, but looks deeper to see you shining. As Jesus taught us, so we pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass